Samantha Cole had learned early that the world didn't make exceptions for people like her. She was the girl whose sneakers were too big, whose backpack smelled faintly of the thrift store she couldn't afford to skip, whose lunch was always packed in a paper bag instead of a designer tote. In the crowded hallways of Lincoln High, she was invisible, or worse, a target. Not cruelly, not overtly, at least not every day, but enough to carve a permanent mark into her young heart. The nickname had started with a whisper, "Nobody," and it stuck. It wasn't just the popular clique who made her life miserable, though they were the architects of most of her pain. Teachers rarely noticed her. Even classmates who weren't openly cruel seemed to forget she existed. Samantha walked the halls with a small, tight-lipped smile, always aware that someone somewhere might laugh at her if she slipped up, if she dared to hope. Her solace came in small things. A well-worn book tucked under her arm, her father's faded baseball cap, a quiet corner of the library where the sunlight fell just right on the reading table. In that library, she imagined a different life, one where the popular kids couldn't touch her, where her voice mattered, where the world noticed her. It was the week before prom when the cruelest reminder arrived. Samantha's classmates had taken to social media with the merciless precision of teenagers fueled by boredom and entitlement. Memes mocked the thriftiness of her dress, the clumsiness with which she carried herself, the supposed loser status of her family. The cafeteria became a theater of humiliation, where laughter echoed against the walls and Samantha felt her face burn with the weight of their eyes, even when she tried to pretend she didn't hear. She told herself it didn't matter, that she didn't care, but the small knot of despair in her stomach knew better. She had learned the art of invisibility, though. She could sit at the back of the auditorium, eyes on the floor, pretending to doodle in her notebook while the world passed her by. Teachers called roll, classmates exchanged gossip, and Samantha counted the ceiling tiles. Every laugh at her expense was a stone in a wall she was slowly building around herself. A wall that promised one day, somehow, she'd rise above it. And then came the call, the one that changed everything. Her phone rang during the final period of the day, a small, unassuming number from the local Army recruitment office. Samantha stared at it for a moment, her heart hammering in a rhythm that made the room spin. She wasn't the kind of girl who got calls like this, not someone from Lincoln High, certainly not nobody. Curiosity and a flicker of hope waged war inside her. She answered. "Hello, Samantha," a calm, professional voice asked. "This is Sergeant Daniels from the U.S. Army. I understand you've applied for the aviation program." Samantha blinked, applied. She hadn't expected anyone to take her seriously. "Yes," she said cautiously, her voice small but steady. I submitted the paperwork a few months ago." "Good, we've reviewed your profile. You've got potential, determination, mental toughness, resilience. Qualities we don't often see at your age. Are you willing to commit to something challenging, something that could change your life?" Her pulse quickened. She remembered every cruel laugh, every whispered joke about how she was worthless, and she felt a fire ignite in her chest. "Yes," she said firmly, "I'm willing." The voice on the other end paused, then said, "Good. We'll schedule your initial assessment. Be ready. This will not be easy." Samantha hung up, her hands trembling with a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. The hallway outside the classroom buzzed with the typical chaos of teenage life, but she felt different, lighter somehow. The world that had ignored her mocked her and labeled her a nobody. It was about to change. She didn't know how yet. She just knew that one word no longer defined her. She went home that evening and told her father, a man who had always quietly supported her, that she was thinking about the Army. His reaction was muted surprise, followed by a warm, unwavering smile. "I knew you were destined for more," he said, ruffling her hair in a rare display of pride. "Just promise me you'll be careful." Samantha nodded. Careful. That word felt foreign. She wasn't thinking about being careful anymore. She was thinking about being unstoppable. Boot camp came next, and it was everything she feared and more. Early mornings that left her legs trembling, runs through mud and rain, drills that demanded more than she thought her body could give. She felt broken after the first week, bruised in body and spirit, doubting for the first time whether she was truly strong enough. The other recruits watched her quietly, some mocking her small stature, others simply observing. No one expected the girl from Lincoln High, the nobody, to last long in this environment. But Samantha refused to quit. Every insult from high school, every whisper that she didn't matter became fuel. When her muscles screamed and her lungs burned, she remembered the faces that had laughed at her, the cafeteria tables where she had sat alone, the posts online that mocked her thrift store dress. She dug deeper, pushed harder, and slowly, inexorably, she began to rise. Days blurred into weeks, weeks into months. Samantha learned to carry her own weight and then some. She learned the language of aircraft, the delicate balance of physics and intuition that made flying possible. The first time she climbed into the cockpit of an Apache helicopter, her heart nearly stopped. The machine hummed beneath her fingers, alive and responsive, waiting for her commands. The instructor's voice came through the headset, calm but commanding. "You control everything up here. One wrong move and—" Samantha cut him off with a grin, heart racing. "I got this." That day in the metal belly of a warbird, Samantha realized something vital. She wasn't a nobody. She never had been. The world simply hadn't caught up yet. Months later, after deployments, long nights of study, and relentless drills, she received the invitation, the 10-year reunion. It arrived in her mailbox, plain and unassuming, a small slip of paper among the bills and junk mail. She held it in her hands, heart hammering. Every memory of Lincoln High rushed back. The cafeteria whispers, the taunts in the hall, the feeling of being invisible in a sea of faces. A laugh escaped her, not the laughter of a girl who had been broken, not even the laughter of someone who sought revenge, but the laughter of a person who had survived, who had fought, and who now held the power to change how the world saw her. She stared at the date, at the address, at the tiny words printed on the card. "Come see old friends, celebrate your success, share your journey, old friends, a reunion." The word tasted strange on her tongue. Friends. Somewhere deep in her chest, a quiet fire burned. The reunion was months away, but Samantha could already see the moment in her mind's eye. The dusty gym, the streamers hanging crookedly, the same faces, lined with age and doubt. She pictured her entrance, bold and impossible, a person reborn. A small smile curved her lips. They had called her a nobody. They had thought she'd never leave the shadows, but she had learned how to fly. And the sky was waiting. Samantha Cole's first day at boot camp hit her like a hurricane. The air smelled of sweat, fear, and determination, a scent that clung to her clothes and hair, reminding her with every inhale that this was no ordinary challenge. The drill sergeants were relentless, their voices slicing through the dawn like razor blades. Move, move, move. They didn't just demand obedience, they demanded total transformation. And Samantha, for the first time in her life, felt the crushing weight of being tested, not for popularity, not for grades, but for her very ability to survive. The first run was brutal. The cold morning air burned her lungs as she sprinted across the parade ground. Her legs screamed, her lungs pleaded, but she refused to fall behind. Every time she stumbled, every time she wanted to give up, she pictured the cafeteria at Lincoln High, the cruel laughter, the memes mocking her thrift store dress, the whisper of nobody that had followed her through every hallway. She clenched her teeth and ran harder. They can't see me falter. I can't falter. Days merged into nights of grueling routines. Push-ups, sit-ups, obstacle courses that seemed designed to break the body and the spirit. Recruits cried openly. Some quit in the first week. Samantha wavered only once on a night when the rain fell in sheets and the mud sucked at her boots like a living thing. Exhausted, she collapsed face first into the muck, her body shaking. Her thoughts slipped back to home, to the lonely corners of her high school library, to the small, dim light that had always offered her comfort. And she made a silent vow, "I will rise. I will not let them win." By the end of the first month, Samantha had earned the quiet respect of her peers. Her determination was palpable, her refusal to break contagious. She wasn't loud or arrogant. She didn't boast about her victories. But in the nights when the recruits lay exhausted in their bunks, Samantha's presence lingered like a beacon of endurance. And when the instructors watched, they saw something more, a spark that could not be extinguished. Next came the aviation training, and the real transformation began. The training facility smelled of oil, metal, and anticipation. The Apache helicopters towered over the hangar like mechanical beasts, engines purring as if aware of the fledgling pilots destined to master them. Samantha's heart thundered when she approached the cockpit for the first time. The instructor, a grizzled veteran named Major Harris, sized her up, skeptical at first. "You're small," he said, his voice gruff, "but maybe you've got fire. Let's see if it's enough." Samantha swallowed hard, her pulse racing. She climbed into the cockpit, feeling the controls beneath her fingers like extensions of her own body. The Apache was alive, every switch, dial, and pedal a testament to precision, power, and deadly grace. Major Harris barked commands, tested her reactions, challenged her instincts. Samantha stumbled at first, almost panicking when the simulator's engines roared and alarms screamed. But she caught herself, took a deep breath, and slowly began to understand the rhythm, the flow, the heartbeat of the machine. "You're learning fast," Major Harris said, his tone grudgingly approving. "Most people would have broken under this pressure." Samantha's lips curved into a small, satisfied smile. She wasn't doing this for approval. She was doing this to become. The weeks that followed pushed her further than she ever thought possible. Night missions taught her to navigate by the stars, to read maps and enemy patterns with intuition that bordered on instinct. Day missions taught her the brutal honesty of the Apache's firepower. She learned to control the roar of twin-turbine engines, the recoil of mounted guns, the delicate balance between precision and devastation. Every mistake was punished, every success noted, and every moment was a battle against the voice inside her head that whispered, "You're not enough." She wasn't just training her body, she was forging her mind, her spirit. Boot camp had taught her endurance. Aviation training taught her dominance. Every flight brought a rush of clarity. She could do what others could not. The Apache was an extension of her will. She could fly into danger, navigate chaos, and come out alive. She was no longer the timid girl in the back of the classroom. She was a force. But the most challenging lesson wasn't the machines or the missions, it was the people. Samantha had to learn trust, to rely on her fellow recruits in ways she had never done before. There was Lt. Daniels, a sharpshooter with a quick temper and a sharper wit who constantly tested her. At first, their interactions were tense, full of sarcastic remarks and quiet judgment. "You really think you can handle this?" he asked one night during a simulation. Samantha didn't answer with words. She let her hands move over the controls with precision, letting the helicopter respond to her like an obedient creature. When the mission ended successfully, Daniels nodded silently. Respect earned, she thought, without a word. She also learned the bitter sting of rivalry, as other recruits, those bigger, faster, stronger, mocked her for her size or for the moment she hesitated. But Samantha didn't let it crush her. She turned mockery into fuel, every snide remark another push to prove that skill, courage, and determination mattered far more than size or popularity. Her transformation wasn't easy. She faced nights alone, crying into her pillow, thinking about Lincoln High, thinking about the people who had laughed at her. But each time she emerged stronger. Each time she reminded herself, "I will be someone they will never forget. I will be someone they cannot ignore." Then came her first real-world flight test. The instructors weren't holding back. A simulated combat mission tested every skill she had learned. Night navigation, target acquisition, emergency procedures, split-second decision-making. The helicopter roared beneath her as she maneuvered through the simulated chaos. Alarms blared, wind roared, and for a moment, Samantha's heart leapt into her throat. But she remembered every late-night drill, every bruise, every humiliation from the past. "This is for me. This is my moment." She guided the Apache with precision, executing maneuvers that even some seasoned pilots struggled to perform. When the mission ended, Major Harris walked up, expression unreadable. Then, slowly, a grin spread across his face. "I'll be damned," he muttered. "You've got it. You've really got it." Samantha allowed herself a small smile, one that wasn't hidden behind self-doubt. For the first time, she felt the power of her own capabilities. She wasn't a nobody anymore. She had transformed, not just in skill, but in spirit. But even as she celebrated this victory, a new challenge loomed on the horizon, the homecoming she had long feared, the 10-year reunion. She stared at the invitation again, now more tangible than ever, imagining the faces that had once dismissed her, the voices that had once laughed at her. They didn't know her yet, but soon they would. And when she arrived, they wouldn't just see Samantha Cole, the girl who had endured. They would see Samantha Cole, the woman who had soared. The sky had become her domain, her shield, her weapon. And now it would carry her back to the place where it all began. Samantha Cole had become more than a pilot, she had become a force of nature. The Apache helicopter wasn't just a machine to her. It was an extension of her body, her mind, her will. Every lever, pedal, and joystick felt like it pulsed in sync with her heartbeat. Flying over desert landscapes, through thunderstorms, and into hostile zones, she discovered a terrifying, exhilarating truth. She was no longer the girl they had mocked. She was a protector, a guardian, a warrior. Her first deployment was nothing like boot camp. It was raw, real, and brutal. The desert stretched endlessly beneath her, waves of heat rising like spirits from the sand. Dust storms erupted with sudden ferocity, reducing visibility to near zero. The roar of the Apache's turbines became a constant companion, blending with the howling wind, the distant cracks of gunfire, and the shouts of ground soldiers. The stakes were no longer grades or popularity. They were life and death. On her first mission, she carried a squad of infantry through a narrow canyon, enemy positions known to be scattered along ridges. The radio crackled with tension. Every movement required precision. Every decision could save or end lives. Samantha's hands were steady, her mind laser-focused. She felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders like armor, heavy but protective. One wrong move could mean catastrophe. A sudden flare of light caught her eye, a sniper positioned high on a ridge. The commanding officer barked into the headset. "Enemy fire! Take cover!" Samantha adjusted the helicopter, banking sharply to shield the squad below, her eyes scanning every angle. Heart racing, adrenaline pumping, she executed maneuvers she had once only dreamed of mastering. The Apache responded flawlessly, almost as if it recognized the determination fueling her. Every successful move reinforced a truth she had carried for years. I am capable. I am powerful. I am nobody's victim. The missions grew increasingly dangerous. Night operations tested her instincts to the limit. Darkness blanketed the terrain, leaving only the faint glow of infrared sensors to guide her. In these silent, tense flights, she often found herself thinking about the cafeteria at Lincoln High, the memes, the whispers of nobody. A faint smile would touch her lips, even as her eyes scanned for threats. They had underestimated her then. They didn't know what she was capable of now. Yet the sky was not only a battlefield, it was her sanctuary. In moments of quiet far above the earth, Samantha would drift over mountain ranges and desert plains, the world beneath her both terrifying and breathtaking. The wind whipped across the rotors, carrying away doubt, fear, and the ghosts of her past. Flying became meditation, strategy, and salvation all at once. She discovered a profound freedom in altitude and speed, a separation from the insecurities that had once defined her. But she wasn't alone. The men and women she flew with became more than colleagues. They were family forged in fire. Lt. Daniels, once her rival, had become her partner in countless missions, his trust in her unwavering. Corporal Ortiz, a young gunner, depended on her calm precision to keep him alive. Every crew member had a story of fear, loss, and resilience, and Samantha learned to navigate not only the battlefield but the fragile threads of camaraderie that kept them all grounded. One particularly harrowing night, Samantha's team received an urgent call. Civilians trapped in a hostile zone with enemy forces closing in. The Apache roared through the darkness, every light and sensor scrutinizing the terrain. The radio squawked with panicked voices. Samantha's hands moved with practiced grace, guiding the helicopter through narrow corridors of rock and sand, dodging incoming fire, coordinating with ground units. A momentary lapse could spell disaster. A sudden shot grazed the rotor. The helicopter shuddered violently. Samantha's mind sharpened. She adjusted immediately, banking hard, compensating for the shift, keeping everyone alive. They landed safely in a ravine, the squad disembarking under Samantha's watchful eye. She stayed in the air, circling until extraction was complete. When everyone was finally accounted for, she allowed herself to exhale. The adrenaline lingered, heavy and sweet. She looked at the night sky, vast and indifferent, and for the first time fully understood the weight and exhilaration of responsibility. It was in these missions that Samantha's past became a weapon as much as her skills. The ridicule, the whispers, the constant undermining, they had taught her patience, endurance, and the art of invisibility. Now, invisibility was a tool of precision. She moved through danger with quiet efficiency, unseen until action was necessary, deadly only when required. She had learned that power was not in being loud or cruel, but in mastering oneself, in turning every scar into strength. Back on base, during the brief moments of respite, she often reflected on the contrast between her old life and her new one. The same girl who once ate lunch alone while others mocked her was now entrusted with the lives of dozens. The same girl whose voice went unheard was now giving commands that determined success or failure. She trained younger pilots, sharing her knowledge, her calm under pressure, her unwavering confidence. Her classmates from Lincoln High had no idea she existed, yet here she was, teaching life and death lessons to the next generation. And still the reunion loomed. Every time she returned home on leave, the thought crept in. The people who had once ignored or mocked her would be there. They had no idea that the timid girl in the back of the room had transformed into someone capable of commanding an Apache, saving lives in hostile territories, and earning medals she had once only imagined. The prospect made her pulse quicken, not out of fear, but anticipation. She wanted them to see, truly see, the person she had become. She often imagined their faces. Vanessa, the queen bee, still sharp-tongued but now aging like everyone else. Jason, the boy who had tormented her relentlessly, probably convinced himself he had been forgiven by time. Others, more subtle in their cruelty, would perhaps sense the shift in power immediately. Samantha didn't seek revenge, not in the traditional sense. She sought acknowledgement, the truth made visible. The nobody had become someone unforgettable. Yet even as she prepared for that moment, she knew the sky had hardened her for far more than social vindication. The missions, the danger, the responsibility, it had changed her at a fundamental level. She wasn't just strong, she was precise, decisive, and fearless. She could face anything on the ground because she had faced death in the air and emerged unshaken. That fearlessness was intoxicating, empowering, and a promise to herself. Nothing from her past could touch her anymore. Her commander had noticed the transformation too. During a debrief, Major Harris placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're one of the best we've had, Cole. Keep this up and you'll be leading missions yourself soon." The weight of the compliment was staggering. In high school, she had never imagined anyone in authority recognizing her for skill or courage. Now, the praise was earned, undeniable, and real. And yet, despite every accolade, every successful mission, the memory of being a nobody lingered like a shadow. Not as a mark of shame, but as a constant reminder of why she had worked so hard. That shadow would fuel her final transformation, the one that would come when she finally returned home. The reunion was approaching. She had earned medals, respect, and a career few could match. But she had also learned patience, strategy, and the subtle art of presence. The nobody would not announce herself with words or drama. She would arrive with the kind of presence that left no question. She was here. She had always been here, and they would see her exactly as she wanted, undeniable, formidable, unstoppable. Samantha Cole's plane touched down at her hometown airport, the familiar landscape of Lincoln stretching below like a memory suspended in time. Everything was smaller than she remembered: the streets, the school, even the rusted playground where she had once sought solace while others laughed nearby. Yet everything felt heavier, laden with ghosts of the girl she had been, timid, overlooked, nobody. She adjusted her flight jacket, feeling the weight of medals on her chest, the insignia of rank across her shoulders. The uniform was more than fabric, it was a declaration. She had changed. The town had not. Walking through the airport, Samantha noticed familiar faces among the passengers. Some glanced curiously, some recognized her immediately, their eyes widening with uncertainty. She ignored them, keeping her pace steady, measured. Her mind raced with the reunion looming, a single night that would allow her to confront the people who had once shaped her self-doubt. But this time, she would do it on her terms. She stopped briefly in front of the mirror in the airport restroom, staring at the reflection of the woman she had become. High cheekbones, sharp eyes, a posture that radiated confidence and authority. She touched the medals pinned over her heart and felt a surge of satisfaction. No words could describe the transformation. No meme, no whispered insult, no lingering mockery could diminish it. She had been invisible once, but not anymore. The invitation to the reunion burned in her pocket like a secret flame. It was innocuous, printed in black ink on plain cardstock, but to Samantha, it carried the weight of a challenge. The date was approaching, and every day she thought about how to make her entrance. She wanted them to feel the same shock she had felt when she first touched an Apache cockpit, the sudden realization that the world had changed, that the rules had shifted, that she had become unstoppable. Samantha called a trusted military contact, a fellow pilot named Lt. Daniels who had become her closest friend in the field. "I need your help," she said, her voice calm but edged with determination. "I want to make an entrance that leaves no doubt about who I am." Daniels chuckled, recognizing the audacity in her tone. "Samantha, are you planning a stunt? You know they won't expect anything like this, right?" She smiled faintly. "Exactly." She didn't elaborate further, leaving the details deliberately vague. Daniels understood. The woman he knew had always thrived on precision, strategy, and impact. He agreed to help, though the plan would require coordination, clearance, and nerves of steel. Days passed in preparation. Samantha rehearsed her approach in simulations, calculated angles of visibility, considered timing, and anticipated reactions. She visualized the reunion gym, the faces she would see, the shock that would ripple across the crowd. She didn't need revenge. She needed presence, authority, and undeniable proof of her transformation. Every detail mattered: the sound of rotor blades, the silhouette against the evening sky, the moment she would step out of the helicopter. Meanwhile, social media posts about the reunion fueled her anticipation. Some classmates, ignorant of who she had become, were already mocking the possibility of her attendance. "Hope Sam Nobody Cole doesn't show up," one post read. Samantha laughed quietly, the sound tinged with satisfaction rather than malice. Their cruelty was predictable, easily anticipated. It made her plan all the more irresistible. Finally, the night arrived. Samantha's flight team positioned the Apache a few blocks from the high school, rotor blades slicing the night air with a thunderous growl. Lights from the helicopter illuminated the surrounding streets, casting long shadows and drawing startled glances from late-night pedestrians. Samantha secured her helmet, adjusted her gloves, and exhaled slowly. Every beat of her heart matched the rhythm of the rotors. This wasn't just an entrance, it was a statement. The reunion gym was alive with chatter, clinking glasses, and laughter. The fluorescent lights flickered over a crowd that had grown complacent over the years. They had not anticipated her return. Vanessa, the queen bee of her class, held court near the punch table, recounting stories with the same smug confidence she had carried in high school. Jason, her former tormentor, lingered at the edge of the gym, nursing a beer and a quiet insecurity. No one noticed the faint vibration that began to ripple through the floor, a subtle tremor at first, then growing louder. The first beats of rotor blades reverberated through the walls. The chatter faltered, glasses wobbled, Conversations died mid-sentence. Heads tilted toward the windows, the glass trembling as a shadow appeared, massive and awe-inspiring, hovering over the parking lot. The sound was deafening, a rolling thunder of authority and power. Phones rose instinctively, capturing the moment. Every eye in the gym widened. The air crackled with disbelief. The door slid open and there she was. Flight suit crisp, metals gleaming in the artificial light, helmet tucked under her arm. Boots hit the asphalt with a resonance that echoed through the gym. She moved with precision, with purpose, every step deliberate, every motion controlled. It was impossible not to stare. The girl they had mocked, the nobody, was no longer small, timid, or invisible. She was a hero, a force, an undeniable presence that filled the room even before she entered. Inside the gym, whispers surged like electricity. "Is that? No, it can't be." Sam Cole. Samantha's gaze swept across the crowd, pausing on familiar faces. The cafeteria queens and kings of high school had aged, yes, but their arrogance had not entirely faded. She saw shock, confusion, a flicker of fear, and the dawning realization that the girl they had dismissed had risen far above them. Vanessa gasped, placing a hand over her mouth. Jason's jaw dropped. Some classmates froze entirely, phones in hand, unsure whether to record, stare, or flee. Samantha allowed a small, measured smile. She didn't speak yet. She didn't need to. Her presence said everything. She had endured. She had conquered. She had risen. The tension was palpable, a tangible energy that filled the gym. Samantha moved toward the entrance, each step deliberate, each motion sending a clear message. She was not here for validation, not for applause, not for revenge. She was here to claim her space, to be seen, to finally exist in the world that had once tried to erase her. And then the first voice broke the silence, hesitant, shaky. Samantha," Vanessa whispered, unable to mask the awe and disbelief in her tone. Samantha stopped for a heartbeat, meeting her old rival's eyes. "Yes," she replied calmly, voice steady, carrying the weight of years of transformation. "It's me." The room fell into a silence so deep it seemed to hold its breath. Phones were lowered, whispers died, and all eyes fixed on the woman who had returned from the sky. She allowed herself one slow, deliberate glance around the room, cataloging reactions, nodding the disbelief, the curiosity, the undeniable awe. Samantha's mind flicked back to the invitation, to every cruel laugh, every whispered insult, every moment she had felt invisible. They had underestimated her once. They would never make that mistake again. And in that charged, quiet moment, she realized the truth she had always carried. Her power did not come from proving them wrong. It came from living fully, without fear, without apology, without the need for approval. The night air above Lincoln High crackled with anticipation. Inside the gym, Samantha Cole's presence had already stolen the breath of everyone who had once whispered her name with scorn. But she wasn't finished. Not yet. The apex of her statement, the undeniable proof of the woman she had become, was still to come. Outside, her team prepped the Apache helicopter for its landing. The roar of the rotor blades cut through the quiet streets, vibrating the asphalt, rattling nearby windows. The sound was a low, rolling thunder, foreign and terrifying in a town that had once seemed small, safe, and ordinary. The timing was precise. The moment had to strike with maximum impact. Back in the gym, conversation sputtered into silence. Vanessa and Jason, the ringleaders of Samantha's past torment, stared at the glass, their mouths opening and closing like fish in shock. Whispers spread through the crowd. "Is that an Apache? Who is flying it? No way, it can't be her." Samantha's heart raced, not from fear but from exhilaration. She could feel the energy building, a storm she had orchestrated, a crescendo of disbelief and awe. The first vibration reached the gym floor. Windows rattled. Phones were raised instinctively as the crowd surged toward the nearest glass, trying to see what was happening outside. A shadow appeared against the glow of the rotor lights, immense and foreboding. And then, with the weight of inevitability, the Apache descended. Dust swirled around its landing site, kicked up by the immense downward force of the rotors, and a hush fell over the reunion attendees. The party, the laughter, the braggadocio, All of it disappeared in an instant, replaced by a visceral, collective intake of breath. The doors to the helicopter slid open with a mechanical hiss. Out stepped Samantha Cole, boots hitting the asphalt with deliberate authority, metals gleaming under the gym's floodlights. She moved with a precision and grace that seemed almost inhuman to those who remembered her as the timid girl from the back row. Her flight suit clung to her with the weight of history and achievement. Her helmet tucked under one arm, sunglasses reflecting the stunned faces in the gym windows. Inside, the crowd froze. Smartphones recorded every moment, but no device could capture the sheer force of presence emanating from Samantha. She didn't need words. Every glance, every motion, every step spoke of courage, determination, and transformation. She was a living reminder that the girl they had mocked had survived, thrived, and soared, literally. Vanessa, pale and trembling, whispered to Jason, "Is that Sam Cole?" Jason's jaw tightened. "It can't be the Apache metals she's." His disbelief faltered into awe. Samantha allowed a small, controlled smile, savoring the effect. Not cruelty, not malice, just the inevitable acknowledgement of her power. The gym remained silent, the atmosphere thick with tension. The faint hum of the helicopter outside was a heartbeat they could not ignore. Samantha stepped closer to the entrance, her gaze sweeping the room, locking briefly with every familiar face. She didn't speak yet. She didn't need to. Her posture, her presence, her very being conveyed the story they had ignored for years. She was no longer invisible. Then came the first voice, a hesitant, trembling whisper. Samantha." Vanessa's tone was barely audible, disbelief and awe blending into a single tremor. Samantha stopped, allowing the weight of the moment to settle. "Yes," she said, voice steady, resonant, carrying years of triumph and survival. "It's me." The silence that followed was profound. Some attendees lowered their phones, unable to comprehend the scene. Others simply gaped, unable to articulate words. The Apache still roared in the background, a tangible symbol of her transformation. The juxtaposition of the timid girl they had dismissed and the heroic woman who now commanded the attention of an entire room was dizzying, humbling, even frightening. Samantha finally spoke, her voice calm but unmistakable. "I didn't come here to play games, to seek revenge, or to prove anything. I came to show you one simple truth: who you dismiss today can rise above you tomorrow." Her words rippled through the gym, each syllable striking like a precise strike of a blade. She paused, letting the silence amplify her message. The crowd held their collective breath. Jason, the boy who had tormented her relentlessly, stepped forward, uncertainty etched across his face. You weren't supposed to," he stopped, choking on the words. Samantha's gaze met his, unflinching. "I wasn't supposed to what? Survive, succeed, rise. You underestimated me once. Never again." Vanessa's hands trembled. She opened her mouth, searching for a response, but no words came. For the first time, the social hierarchy she had clung to so fiercely seemed meaningless. Samantha's presence alone had rewritten the room, and the echoes of past cruelty bounced back into the faces of the guilty. Samantha's gaze swept one last time across the crowd, landing briefly on the students who had quietly mocked her, laughed at her struggles, or whispered cruel jokes. She didn't need to call them out. They saw themselves in her eyes, reflected, judged, undeniable. And in that reflection, they understood something vital. The nobody had become someone no one could ignore. The helicopter outside continued its low, rumbling presence, the sound reverberating through every wall of the gym, an auditory manifestation of Samantha's journey. The symbolism was not lost on anyone present. This was more than a reunion entrance. It was a proclamation of resilience, courage, and transformation. Then, just as the crowd began to recover from the initial shock, a murmur spread through the gym. Who else knew she could do this? The question hung in the air like a spark ready to ignite. Samantha's eyes narrowed subtly, recognizing the implication. Someone had anticipated part of this moment. Someone had observed her rise without revealing their awareness. Her mind raced briefly, calculating, anticipating. This wasn't unexpected. Life had taught her to expect the unpredictable, but it was enough to make the night more thrilling, more dangerous, more real. She allowed the thought to linger, savoring the tension it created. Whoever had observed her transformation would now witness it fully, undeniable and inescapable. Samantha stepped fully into the gym, the weight of every medal, every experience, every mission she had survived grounding her, giving her power, presence, and control. She was no longer the girl who had cowered in hallways, who had eaten alone, who had felt invisible. She was a living testament to endurance, courage, and the unyielding drive to rise above the impossible. The room was silent. Every gaze followed her movements. Every heartbeat seemed synchronized to the rotor blades outside. She paused at the center of the gym, taking in the faces, the expressions, the collective realization that the girl they had once mocked had returned, and she was formidable, unshakable, unbreakable. Samantha Cole felt the tension in the gym spike like an electric charge. Jason Miller stood near the back, his smug high school arrogance now replaced by something less familiar: fear, uncertainty, and the unspoken realization that the world had shifted, and he had been left behind. His posture was defensive, hesitant, as if every muscle knew the confrontation that had been years in the making was finally at hand. Vanessa clutched her drink, lips trembling. "Sam, she faltered. The words caught in her throat. Samantha didn't give her a chance to stumble further. She didn't need to. Every glance, every movement, every subtle gesture broadcast a silent but powerful message. The girl you once mocked is no longer small, invisible, or powerless. Samantha's eyes swept over the crowd. Some faces twisted in astonishment, others in guilt, many in the blank uncertainty of people unsure how to process a transformation so complete. She stepped further into the gym, boots echoing against the floor, each step measured, deliberate, filled with a power that demanded attention. She stopped at the center, letting the silence stretch. The hum of the Apache outside seemed to synchronize with the collective heartbeat of the room. "Do you remember me?" Samantha asked, voice calm, steady, but carrying the weight of everything she had endured. "The girl you called a nobody." The room shivered with tension. Laughter, the kind that had once been cruel, was nowhere to be found. Only silence, interrupted by the soft whir of rotor blades from outside, and the occasional gulp from someone trying to regain composure. Jason's jaw clenched, Vanessa's hands shook, and the rest of the crowd seemed to shrink under the intensity of her gaze. Samantha allowed herself a faint smile. She didn't need to raise her voice. The years of resilience, training, survival, and triumph spoke louder than words, and yet she wanted them to understand, to feel the transformation that had taken place. "I didn't just survive your mockery," she continued, her tone calm but unwavering. "I thrived because of it. Every whispered joke, every taunt, every time you dismissed me, it fueled me. You taught me one very important lesson: never underestimate the person you deem insignificant." The air in the gym was thick with disbelief. Vanessa's face had turned pale, and Jason's gaze darted nervously. Whispers rippled through the room, but none dared interrupt. Samantha held their attention entirely, a force they couldn't ignore, no matter how much they wanted to. Then came the question she had anticipated for years, the one that would put everything on the line. Jason stepped forward, his voice trembling. "So, what now? You're some kind of hero." Samantha allowed herself a small laugh, soft, controlled, and knowing. "Hero isn't the word I would use," she said. "I am someone who refused to be defined by your narrow minds. I am someone who chose her own path, fought her own battles, and emerged unshakable. And you are seeing finally the consequence of your own ignorance." The room seemed to pulse with the weight of her words. Some classmates averted their gaze, others couldn't look away. Every eye was on her, measuring, recalculating, rethinking everything they had assumed about the timid girl in the back row. The power dynamics of the room had shifted irreversibly. Vanessa's voice wavered. "Sam, we didn't know." Samantha raised a hand, cutting her off. "No, "You did know," she said, her voice firmer, sharper, "and that's why it mattered. But it doesn't matter anymore. Not to me. It only matters that you see the truth now. Underestimating someone like me is a mistake you cannot undo." At that moment, her phone buzzed quietly in her pocket. She ignored it, letting the moment stretch. She didn't need interruptions. Every person in the room understood the stakes. Every whisper, every reaction, every subtle gesture amplified the impact of her presence. The murmurs grew louder, an undercurrent of awe and disbelief running through the gym. Someone whispered, She's incredible." Another muttered, "All those Apache missions, all those medals." The recognition was slow, but it was real. For the first time, the people who had once mocked her understood. Samantha Cole was not a nobody. She never had been. And then, from the shadows near the doorway, a new figure appeared, someone who had observed her transformation long before tonight. A former classmate, someone who had always kept tabs on her quietly, someone who had underestimated Samantha alongside the rest. The sudden presence introduced a new tension, a hint of danger. Their gaze locked with Samantha, and she felt the subtle shift. This confrontation was far from over. Her instincts, honed in life-and-death missions, kicked in. She didn't panic. She didn't flinch. Every training exercise, every night flight, every battlefield decision had prepared her for this moment. Calmly, she raised her hand slightly, signaling that she was aware. The figure hesitated, as if realizing they had underestimated her yet again. Meanwhile, the hum of the Apache outside grew louder, almost like a heartbeat in the night. Samantha allowed herself a brief glance toward the rotor blades, feeling the familiar surge of control, power, and precision that had carried her through impossible situations. That power was hers, always hers, and it was about to remind everyone in that gym that she had mastered forces far beyond their imagination. She turned back to the crowd, voice steady, filled with conviction. "I didn't come here to intimidate. I came here to show what determination, courage, and resilience can accomplish. And yes, I have been tested in ways you cannot imagine. I have faced danger, fear, and impossibility, and I survived. Not because anyone gave me a chance, but because I refused to let the world define me." The room was silent again, but this silence was different. It was not awkward. It was not hesitant. It was the awe of recognition, the acknowledgement that someone who had once been dismissed had become unstoppable. Samantha's presence filled the room completely, and no one dared challenge it. Finally, she allowed herself a subtle, victorious smile. "Tonight isn't about revenge," she said softly. "It's about truth. And the truth is, you all called me a nobody, but here I stand. And now you see me." The murmurs shifted from disbelief to admiration, from awe to quiet applause. Phones lowered, eyes widened, and the weight of the past seemed to lift, replaced by a new reality. Samantha Cole had rewritten her story entirely, and there was nothing anyone could do to erase it. The shadowed figure at the edge of the gym stepped forward, their presence slicing through the charged air like a knife. Samantha Cole's instincts, honed over years of battlefield precision, flared instantly. This was different from the reunion shock or the stunned disbelief of her classmates. It was calculated, deliberate, and dangerous. Every movement, every glance, every subtle shift in posture screamed intent. Her eyes narrowed beneath the helmet she had tucked under her arm. The person before her wasn't just an observer. They were a strategist, someone who had watched her rise and waited for a moment of weakness. And now, they thought they had found it. "Miss Cole," the figure said, voice smooth, measured, almost unnervingly calm. "I've been following your career. Your rise, your skills, very impressive. But now here you are, exposed among those who know you. Dangerous exposure, don't you think?" Samantha's pulse remained steady. She felt no fear, only the surge of awareness that came before action. Every mission, every high-stakes flight, every split-second decision in the air had trained her for moments like this. She scanned the room, noting exits, positions, the crowd's panic, the helicopter outside ready for extraction if necessary. "You underestimate me," Samantha replied evenly, voice resonant calm. I am not here to be exposed. I am here to demonstrate the truth, and your attempts to intimidate me will fail. Always." The figure smiled faintly, but it didn't reach their eyes. Confidence is admirable, but arrogance can be dangerous. They paused, letting the words hang in the charged silence. "Perhaps it's time you realize that not all battles are in the sky." The tension in the gym escalated, a tangible wave of unease rolling over the crowd. Some classmates, still recovering from Samantha's previous entrance, sensed the danger immediately. Whispers surged through the room. "Who is that? What do they want? Is she safe?" Samantha didn't flinch. She had anticipated unpredictability. She had trained for life-and-death scenarios that dwarfed the petty threats of high school. Her mind worked quickly, cataloging possibilities, analyzing the figure's posture, timing, and potential strategies. Every detail mattered. The way their hands rested lightly at their sides, the subtle tension in their shoulders, the calculated glint in their eyes. This was someone who had studied her, who had prepared for her. But Samantha had studied life and death far beyond reunions, far beyond social games. A sudden movement from the figure drew Samantha's attention. A hand brushed toward a concealed device at their waist. Her instincts flared. Without hesitation, she shifted toward the nearest support beam, using it to obscure the figure's line of sight while simultaneously signaling to LT, Daniels, who had been stationed near the back. "Eyes on the perimeter," she whispered through her secure comm. "Ready for extraction if necessary, but I intend to resolve this here." The figure froze, a microsecond of recognition flashing across their face. They hadn't anticipated such rapid, tactical awareness in a civilian setting. Samantha smiled faintly, inside, not outwardly. She had predicted nearly every possible outcome, and now she was exploiting the one they hadn't accounted for, her calm under pressure. Suddenly, the crowd scattered instinctively, sensing the escalation. The rustle of movement, the panicked whispers, the shifting weight of dozens of observers created chaos. Samantha didn't panic. She thrived. Her presence became magnetic, commanding. The figure realized too late that they had underestimated the skill and precision of the woman they confronted. With a swift, fluid motion, Samantha pivoted, her hands moving in a sequence of controlled, deliberate gestures trained for precision under extreme conditions. The figure faltered, caught off guard, their plan unraveling in real time. It was a dance she had rehearsed countless times in simulations. Anticipate, control, neutralize. The crowd watched in a mixture of horror and awe as Samantha closed the distance between herself and the figure. Every movement was calculated to assert dominance without unnecessary violence, a masterful display of controlled power. The figure realized that brute force would not work here. Samantha had learned to wield authority, presence, and strategy far beyond the limitations of physical confrontation. "You've watched me rise," Samantha said quietly, voice carrying over the subtle roar of the Apache outside. "You've observed, planned, and calculated, but you failed to account for one thing. I don't respond with fear. I respond with preparation, precision, and purpose." The figure's confidence wavered. A subtle tremor in their stance betrayed the realization that Samantha's presence was no longer just symbolic. It was tactical, calculated, and unstoppable. Every mission, every challenge, every hostile environment had sharpened her instincts, giving her an edge that no reunion observer could match. Then, without warning, Samantha's phone buzzed, a signal from Daniels confirming that the perimeter was secure and the helicopter was ready if the situation escalated further. She allowed herself a faint smirk. She didn't need the extraction plan. She had already neutralized the threat simply by projecting unwavering control. The figure, sensing the futility, stepped back slightly. "Impressive," they muttered, voice tinged with begrudging respect. "Truly, but remember, visibility can be dangerous." Samantha's gaze hardened. "Visibility isn't dangerous. Complacency is. Underestimation is. And you've underestimated me." The room exhaled collectively. The crowd, previously frozen, now watched in silent reverence as the confrontation ended not with violence, but with the undeniable display of Samantha's power and composure. The figure retreated, a final glance over their shoulder acknowledging defeat, before disappearing into the night. Samantha lowered her hand slowly, allowing the tension to dissipate. The rotor blades of the Apache hummed steadily outside, a reminder of the force she commanded beyond the gym walls. Every person in the room had witnessed a transformation that went beyond appearance. It was skill, precision, and courage made manifest. Vanessa and Jason, along with the rest of the crowd, were silent. Awe, respect, and a subtle trace of fear lingered in their expressions. Samantha had not only confronted the ghosts of high school, she had confronted a tangible, present threat and emerged victorious without compromise. Stepping toward the center of the gym, Samantha allowed herself a brief, satisfied smile. She wasn't here to gloat. She wasn't here for revenge. She was here to demonstrate what determination, courage, and resilience could achieve when someone refused to be defined by the world's limitations. For the first time, the room understood fully. The girl they called a nobody was not just a survivor. She was a strategist, a force, and a hero in every sense. And anyone who tried to challenge that now would discover the same truth she had learned in the skis. Underestimating her was a mistake no one could afford to make. Samantha Cole's fingers hovered over the controls of the Apache, her heartbeat perfectly synchronized with the rotor blade's powerful rhythm. The reunion, the stunned classmates, the confrontation with the shadowed figure, they all seemed distant now, like echoes of another life. Outside, the night sky awaited, vast and indifferent, yet full of challenges that demanded precision, courage, and resolve. Daniel's voice crackled through her comm headset. Coordinates locked. Situation confirmed. You're cleared for immediate response. Intel suggests a high-threat scenario. Civilians may be involved. Samantha exhaled slowly, a ritual she had mastered in countless missions. Calmness wasn't just a choice. It was survival. The Apache groaned under her command, responding with mechanical obedience to every adjustment of the controls. Every lever, every joystick, every instrument she had memorized in training came alive beneath her hands. Understood, she replied, voice firm, steady, unwavering. We move out. Let's bring them home safely. As the Apache lifted off, the reunion gym receded behind her, distant yet still visible. Some classmates watched from the windows, awe and confusion etched into their faces. Samantha didn't look back. This was no longer about proving anything to them. That chapter of her life had been closed the moment she set foot in the helicopter earlier that evening. The coordinates guided her toward the source of the alert, a remote industrial complex on the outskirts of town. Reports indicated hostages, workers trapped by a malfunctioning security system, compounded by threats from an armed intruder who had barricaded themselves inside. The stakes were immediate, real, and unforgiving. As the Apache sliced through the night sky, Samantha felt the familiar rush of adrenaline, not fear but clarity. Every decision would be critical. Every second counted. She had faced hostile fire, desert storms, and life-or-death missions overseas. Nothing compared to this mixture of civilian risk and strategic precision that required her full focus. Her fingers danced over the controls, lowering the Apache into a tactical hover over the complex. Night vision sensors illuminated the area, revealing shadows and shapes that could signal danger. The intruder had fortified positions, and panic among the hostages was palpable, even from her elevated vantage point. Visual confirmed, Daniels reported. 2 hostiles. Hostages are unharmed for now, but they're scared. Movement is unpredictable. Samantha's eyes narrowed. The scenario demanded finesse, not brute force. She calculated angles, possible escape routes, and intervention strategies in real time. Her past had trained her for this, missions where split-second miscalculations meant death. This was no different. Precision was everything. She deployed the Apache's spotlights, carefully illuminating the area while avoiding sudden movements that could provoke the intruder. Her voice through the comm was calm, authoritative. "This is the U.S. military. I am here to ensure everyone gets out safely. Follow instructions. No one needs to get hurt." The intruder reacted, gun raised, moving unpredictably toward the hostages. Samantha assessed their behavior instantly, noting weaknesses in their positioning and patterns in their movements. She guided Daniels and the crew through a coordinated maneuver, directing the Apache to provide cover while keeping a careful distance to prevent escalation. Time stretched. Every second was a calculated risk. Samantha's focus was absolute, unwavering. Her past, her training, her triumphs, all coalesced into this single moment. She was the girl from Row 8, yes, but now she was also a tactician, a protector, a hero commanding the elements themselves. With precise adjustments, she lowered the Apache further, giving her line of sight and control without endangering the hostages. Her voice remained calm over the comm. "Move toward the exit, stay low, and follow my guidance. You're safe now." The hostages obeyed, trembling but compliant. The intruder hesitated, confusion flashing in their eyes. Samantha seized the opportunity. With a controlled burst of mechanical authority, she positioned the Apache to block the intruder's line of escape while maintaining safety for the civilians. The intruder realized too late that they had been outmaneuvered. Within minutes, all hostages were escorted safely to the perimeter. The intruder, seeing no path to control the situation, surrendered quietly, realizing the futility of resistance. Samantha's command presence had neutralized the threat without violence, an orchestration of skill, calm, and authority honed over years of perilous missions. As the dust settled, Samantha hovered above the complex, watching emergency crews take over. She felt the familiar rush of satisfaction that came with a job executed flawlessly, lives saved, danger averted, precision realized. She exhaled, knowing the mission was complete. Back at Lincoln High, news of her heroics spread rapidly. Social media buzzed with videos captured from the reunion, the helicopter landing, and now, the rescue operation. Former classmates watched in disbelief as the girl they had once mocked became the undeniable heroine of the night. They had seen her transformation in the gym, but now the world saw it too. Samantha finally returned to base, the Apache touching down smoothly under her expert control. Daniels was waiting, a proud smile on his face. "Incredible work, Cole," he said. "You handled that like no one else could." She removed her helmet, allowing her hair to fall into place, her face marked with the faint sheen of exertion. "It's what we train for," she replied quietly. But inside, she allowed herself a flicker of pride. She had come full circle, from the girl who ate alone in the cafeteria to the pilot commanding an Apache under extreme circumstances, saving lives and rewriting her story entirely. Later, alone on the helipad, she looked up at the stars stretched across the night sky. The reunion, the confrontation, the mission, it was all part of a journey that had defined her. She touched the Apache gently, as if acknowledging a loyal companion. "We've come far," she whispered, a promise and a reflection. "And we're not done yet." In that moment, Samantha understood the ultimate truth she had been shaping for years. Her worth had never been defined by the whispers of high school peers or the doubts of anyone else. Her strength came from her choices, her resilience, and her courage to step into every challenge without hesitation. The sky had tested her, life had tested her, and she had emerged triumphant, unshakable, and visible in every sense of the word. As dawn approached, Samantha finally allowed herself to feel the depth of her victory. Not just the rescue mission, not just the reunion triumph, but the journey that had carried her from invisibility to awe, from ridicule to respect, from fear to mastery. She had rewritten her own narrative, and in doing so had shown everyone, herself most of all, the true power of resilience. The Apache hummed softly beneath her, a faithful companion through the storm of life. And somewhere high above the earth, Samantha smiled. The sky remembered, the world remembered, and she would never be a nobody again.